Most people quit their forever worlds for one reason no one talks about. It's not because you suck at building, it's actually because your builds aren't made to last forever. I know how you feel because I struggled with this too, but I can help you fix it. Before we fix our builds, we have to understand why they look bad long term. It's usually because of 3 mistakes, and you're probably making one of them. From the front, your build looks perfect, but in a forever world, you're gonna see your build from every angle, and that's where most builds fail. Because if one side looks bad, it's gonna ruin the entire thing. Even if the rest is perfect, that one angle can make you want to blow it up. But don't worry, because I'll help you fix that later. Your builds aren't cohesive. In a forever world, you're gonna build a lot of things, and if you decide to build a modern house next to a medieval one, your world's gonna look messy and the builds are gonna feel out of place. But don't worry, it's super easy to fix. You just have to separate them, and there's a couple different ways to do this. Do you ever look at a build and think, why would I ever build that? Well, that's just because you got better at building in Minecraft. But maybe there's new blocks in the game and now you hate the old ones. That's why it's so important to... That was weird. Anyway, fixing your builds is actually easier than you think, and I'm gonna show you how in just 3 steps. Well, technically 9. Also, this only works when you do everything together. If you skip step 1 and 2, it won't work. But if you learn step 1, then step 2, and finally step 3, that's when you can actually make a build that looks good forever. Before we even start building, we need to find a build style. This is the foundation of your builds. So if you pick the wrong one, you might end up hating the build later on. This happens to every builder, but there's a super easy trick to find your own build style. To make sure you pick the right one, just look at other builds. Find the ones you like the most, and you should be able to find your build style like that. But what if you like building in different styles? Do I just start a new world to be able to build a modern house? Well, no. That actually comes down to the plan for the world. If you just start placing builds everywhere, it's just gonna look like a mess. So you need a plan. I like to do this by going really up high and taking a screenshot of the area, and then in Microsoft Paint, you can draw and plan out your world. This way you can build a medieval house and a modern one in the same world, but plan to separate them with a mountain or a forest. That way you can build in different styles, but it won't ruin the entire look of your world. Before we start building, there's one more trick you probably didn't think about. If your build is just here to look good, it might feel useless. That's why we need to give it a purpose. If you turn a boring house into a storage room, you won't think about it looking bad, because it's a super important part of the world and it feels like it has to be there. Do all 3 of these things and you have the perfect start to making a build that looks amazing forever. Okay, so I'm basically going to show you guys how I make my own forever builds, and that way it's easier for you guys to follow and apply the tricks I show you. Starting with the build style, I just found a few images on Pinterest. I like to build in a medieval style, and this is pretty similar to that. Next, for the plan, it's nothing crazy, and I would spend more time on this if you want to put it in a forever world, but for the sake of this example, this is fine. Then for purpose, this build is going to be a starter house, so you can imagine the house has storage, crafting, and everything you need for the early game survival. To stop making ugly builds, you need to master these 4 things. If the shape of your build looks bad, you can't fix it with a nice block palette, it'll still look ugly, but you already know how to make a good shape. Without realizing it, you made a list of great shapes when picking your build style earlier. So just pick one and start building, right? No, that's actually the biggest mistake people make, because if you want to move a wall by a couple blocks, now you have to destroy the entire thing and rebuild it again. And trust me, we've all been there. What you actually want to do is grab wool or concrete and make the skeleton of the build. If you want to fill it in or use different colors to separate a complicated shape, that works too, but we're just making an outline to give us an idea of how the shape will look. The important part is that even if the blocks are super boring to look at, the shape should be interesting enough that it doesn't matter. But that's easier said than done. You will probably struggle with this. Making the perfect shape for a build takes a lot of time, but I found a way to make it easy, so just copy me. For this build, I went with a typical Minecraft house shape. It's nothing crazy, but I'm making sure to mark out the windows and doors in red concrete, and then all the roof is orange concrete and the walls are blue. And with all these different colors, I can actually envision what the build might look like when it's done. But yeah, I just went around all the sides of the build, making sure the shape was interesting from every angle. And even if the concrete is super boring to look at, I think this shape is still really interesting. Now we have a foundation, but if we choose the wrong block palette, it could ruin the build. Everyone wants to use the crazy blocks, but let's be honest, are you gonna like that style forever? Probably not, but it's really up to you. Here's what works for me. I like using block palettes that have been around for a while. Sometimes the simplest option is the best, so I don't use crazy blocks that could ruin my build. Instead, I keep it simple and I add a bit of color for a pop. Now listen up, this is how you make the perfect block palette. Pick your favorite block as the base. This should be a block that looks good in all of your builds. After that, find more blocks for wood beams, the roof, walls, and every part of your build. Make sure these blocks work together because the build looks really weird if they don't. But most people really struggle with block palettes. So if that's you, then just take inspiration from other palettes online. Now we need similar blocks to texture the build, and we can use these to create shadows. After that, most people would just slap it on the build, but that won't work. If you spam your blocks randomly, even the best palette will look ugly. But if you're not at this level of building yet, don't worry because because later I'll show you how to update your builds when you eventually get better. This is my block palette. I used a lot of tuff because that's honestly one of my favorite blocks to build with, but then I added some mangrove for a pop of color, and that's pretty much it. But you can see I have one line of blocks for the roof, one line of blocks for the walls, and then pretty much every other aspect of the build. And I recommend you lay it out like this, that way it's a lot easier to just take that and put it on the build eventually. Now we have a beautiful build. The shape is perfect, the blocks look great, but there's one more thing missing. When you look at the build from far, it looks like it shouldn't be there, and that's a big problem you need to fix. We have to integrate this build into the landscape. To do this, we can use rocks, trees, and sometimes just spamming some grass is perfect. You might think this will fix it, but there's still one thing missing. So here's a trick to add life to any build. We can add storage, fields, and a path. Now when you step away, it feels like it was always meant to be there. Only the best builders put this amount of detail, and that's why their builds look better than most. To give life to my build, I added a path, trees, and grass. That's all I have to say for this part, but since the time lapse isn't over, I have time to ask you to subscribe. The last trick is what turns a regular build into one that lasts forever. Without this, your builds won't be the same, because if you decide to cut corners at any point, you can ruin the entire thing. If you look at your build and it's not perfect, that means you need to change something. What makes a build last forever is when it feels completely done. So in this stage, really look at your build from every angle. Ask yourself, would I want to look at this for the rest of my world? If something looks wrong, fix it now, because the extra effort is going to make your build look finished. And this is the thing most people skip because they want to rush to the next build. But trust me, if you spend a lot of time on one build, it'll look better than any other build in your world. Here's my build. As you can see, I did not cut any corners at all. Okay, seriously, I'm gonna be honest, I'm a bad example of this, but this video is already a week late and I'm super sorry for that. But in general, I did spend a lot of attention to every single side of the build. It's just a little empty on the inside, and that's pretty much it. Well, you did it. You made a beautiful build, but will it look good forever? Believe it or not, this is just the start. Making a forever build is all about what you do after the build is done. So take 2 minutes every day and just go look at it. If it still feels good after 5 days, you almost made a forever build. But what happens when you get better at building and the build feels old? Well, then update it. You can add things to the build, remove things, or completely change it. The point is that your build will never be finished. You have to be okay with changing it over time. And that's the only real secret to making a build that looks good forever. Well, that, and also you need to stop comparing yourself to other builders. There's always going to be someone who's better than you, so instead of comparing your builds, take inspiration from the people that are better than you and use that to get better at building yourself. But after putting a ton of effort into one single build, you now build something that will look good forever. And honestly, good job. Most people can't do this, and you just became better than 99% of builders out there. That was a lot of information, but if you can master these tricks, you will literally be addicted to playing in your forever world. Instead of wanting to quit, your builds are going to be so good that you want to play just to look at them, and you can finally start the forever world you always wanted. I haven't seen anyone talk about this, so hopefully this video was useful. Consider liking the video and subscribing, but with that, have a great rest of your day.